this is going to be my book review for Elysium, Modern Myths of Immortality by Rodopi Sisamis. Now, I do apologise, I don't know what the cover looks like for you guys. I don't know if it's the right way around or if it's backwards, but I'll put a picture of it somewhere, probably towards the end of the video and obviously in the thumbnail as well. But I would like you guys to go check it out. Let me know what you think. Obviously let the author know what you think of her short story collection too. And hopefully it can inspire you the way that it has inspired me to start looking into short stories a little bit more. Anyway, that was just like my speed kind of like blah, 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 blah. But I wanted to say, I guess this is kind of like a disclaimer, I guess you could say. This video may come across really biased purely because the writer of this particular collection of short stories is someone that I do consider a very close friend of mine, and I love her and I love her tweets. It's really weird because we've never met in real life, although she does live quite close to where some of my family do, which is amazing. So I'll probably have to come up with some sort of excuse to go and visit her as soon as I've moved. But at the same time, it's also because she's an indie author, and I have a thing about, because I'm going to be an indie author, I'm also an indie author as it is, and I like the idea of supporting other indie authors, because with a lot of indie works out there, there's a lot of diamonds and there's a lot of gold and there's a lot of platinum out there that people just don't know about because they're just not going to. We're indie authors. We're not exactly being sold in mainstream stores and things like that, which is kind of a shame, but I guess that's all kind of part of like indie publishing. And there's also the fact that we do most of our own marketing, we're doing most of our own publishing, we're doing most of our own, you know, allocation of various commissions and things for book covers and all sorts. We're doing all of that by ourselves. We don't have the powerhouse of a publishing company behind us doing everything for us and alongside us. We're making all those decisions for ourselves, for our readers, ultimately. This is why I set up this channel, because once I finish my own fiction and start publishing, start publicizing that to the world and marketing it to the world, I'm going to be doing that from this particular platform, my future website, and this particular blog that's going to be going along with it, and also my social media. With a lot of indie authors, I like the idea of knowing that when I can purchase any one of their books, I can also talk about their books, I can rate their books, I can market their books, and I can share their books to various people, and it's pretty good. Also, side note, I will try and figure out how to get the ebook version of various stories that I'm going to be coming out with up and running at some point. I haven't worked out how to do that yet through KDP, but once I do, I will let you guys know. But that will all be part of my writing journey towards publication. Anyway, back to this particular collection of short stories. I have to say, I absolutely loved it. I loved it so much. Mostly because it's a collection of, like the title says, modern retellings of myths. I'm someone like the writer who grew up with a lot of myths and legends being told or being read when I was quite young. So growing up knowing about Hercules, growing up knowing about, you know, the various stories written by Ovid and all that kind of stuff, I was very much a nerd on their own. But it wasn't part of my culture. I'm not Greek, I'm not Roman, so I don't have any of kind of those really old myths in me. However, this is something that is culturally sound to the writer being of Greek heritage herself. So this is something that's kind of, I don't know, I kind of felt like it was kind of personal in that sense, being that she is opening up more of her culture to the reader, but she's also revealing these are the storylines that I really loved when I was growing up, and I want to share those particular structures with you as a reader. Now, from an academic point of view, the last time that I studied myths, like really intensely, I think was my first year of university when I studied English literature. So this is going all the way back to like 2013, 2014, and that was the first and the last time that I really got the whole notion of adaptations, the understanding of it, and how to adapt something successfully and not successfully. What makes all adaptations completely valid, regardless of how well they've been adapted or how well or how badly they've been adapted. They're all still adaptations of particular stories. You're not always going to find something that is going to be an absolute perfect representation of, or a perfect adaptation of. that's a whole thing I could probably go into a whole different time if you guys want that. But I just thought it was really kind of clever in that sense, that when I was studying most of that, it was more, when you're studying adaptations, it's more about the structure and the way that the person is writing or telling the story rather than the story itself. There are so many layers when it comes to story analysis, and then on top of that, if that particular story happens to be an adaptation, there's even more layers with that, and it blows my mind. So for the entire 3 years I was at university, I did end up studying adaptations as part of my degree, and I absolutely thoroughly loved it. Absolutely love it. And it's something that I still do today, which is great. But it means I also don't get to enjoy movies or books or anything like that the way that I used to before I went to university, because now everything just needs to be analysed. So it's like, I wonder where that story came from. Oh, I really like that story structure. But anyway, I really, really liked this particular collection purely because from an adaptation point of view, I thought these stories were wonderful for a mixture of reasons. One, a lot of the characters that you do come across, you're already kind of familiar with how to say their names, familiar with their backstories about who they are, and if you've already read a lot of Roman or Greek myths, you probably will already recognise the stories from which these characters actually come from. Even though the situations that they're in throughout this entire collection are completely different, or just there's like very loose elements of those original stories within her particular modern retellings, you will feel a sense of familiarization with these particular characters or with just the story, even though the characters have different names. At the same time, on that whole note of familiarization, there's also certain elements or certain tropes when it comes to writing about or reading about immortality as a whole process. Like, some people may only understand immortality as something that happens after death because of religious leanings that they might have. Or there are various counts of immortality through various myths, especially from Greek stories. There's the gods who are always immortal for this reason or another. There are gods who are immortal with these type of powers and skills, whereas others do not. There is the story of the phoenix and things like that. There are various ways that you can retell stories about the whole notion of immortality, and that gets completely covered. Like, various tellings of immortality and various understandings of immortality get completely covered in this entire collection, and I absolutely thoroughly loved that. So that whole familiarization aspect was very key for me. I noticed it. By the time I got to like the fourth story, I was like, I see what you're doing, girl. I see what you're doing. So I highly recommend this particular novel, the collection of short stories. I really, really enjoyed them. Another aspect to the really strong storytelling of each of these stories. Okay, listen, right. Let me just explain something to you. Short stories and me don't usually get along. We don't get along. I don't know what it is. I think it's because every time I read a short story, or if I come across a collection of short stories, my immediate reaction is, I can't write a short story because I can't do anything in a small, compact way. And because I have trouble being creative, like having the creative ability to put something in a small package, I find short stories to be kind of, unbearable is a bit of a strong word. I would say I find them to be quite difficult because psychologically I can't push past those personal barriers of, well, if I can't write that short story, there's no way that I'd be able to read them. However, I do read short stories. Reading them is not that much of a big deal for me, but it does make the process a bit of a long one, and it does make me question a lot about what I can do to try and write a better short story. What has this writer done to write this particular short story? And what can I learn from their particular structure and their whole process? And I'm learning a lot, and I feel like this particular collection of short stories, this one and obviously Tom Hanks' one, which I've already come across. I haven't got the physical copy in my hand. It's still in Toronto. I think I'm going to thoroughly enjoy those stories, and I'm going to definitely reread this collection again because, girl, it was good. So I just have an issue with short stories, but I would like to write my own at some point. But it's not going to happen anytime soon. Like, it's not going to happen anytime soon. So don't hold your breath. No, it's not gonna happen anytime soon. No. But with that said, this particular collection is fantastic. Rodopi manages to, oh, sorry, I'm going to call her Ro because this is how I know her. So I don't want to keep saying her name wrong because she's probably going to sit there and start wincing and being like, oh my God. The way that she's packaged each story, from whether it's the lyrical language that's used, like the language that she uses in these stories is so beautiful. It's like liquid butter just flowing down your naked body. Sorry, I'm so cheesy. It's sick. Sorry. But the way that she describes certain things and the way that she uses metaphors and similes, and it's almost as if each sentence is like a miniature poem in and of itself. Okay, maybe not each sentence, it's a bit rich because otherwise it would just be a poem. But it's like the way that she describes various things that are happening, various action scenes that are occurring, the emotions that certain characters are feeling, the experience that she wants the reader to experience when describing something that the character is going through from a third person point of view, from the omniscient narrator point of view. It's just so beautiful. It's lyrical in some stories. Other stories, there's just sentences where it's just completely electrifying. You're just kind of like, wow, that whole sentence just took my breath away. Like, that was so beautiful. It's just, I love the way that she structured every single paragraph. I love the way that she structured every single story. And I love the lyrical flow of the language that she uses within each story. The really awesome effect as well with using beautiful language and wonderful structure is the fact that from the get-go, from the start of every single short story that you read, you have no idea what's happening. All you know is that you're with a particular character in a particular location and you basically need to follow them through this whole experience of what's going on, what this whole story is going to build up to. Whether it's something that occurs over one day, something that occurs over a couple of days, or something that she's describing, the writer is describing that's happened over the course of a few weeks. You're with this character from start to finish, but the various elements that build up around this character and around the story as you go along, it just keeps multiplying and just multiplying and multiplying. And then by the end of the story, it's like, what? Like, oh my God, I did not see that coming. Like, you see the build up a little bit, or at least that was just kind of what I experienced anyway. You see the build up, and then after a while, it's like, okay, I've got an idea as to where this might be going. Again, touching on familiarization, if you're already aware of a lot of myths, you might sort of think in your head, okay, I have an idea of what it is that she was drawing her inspiration from, but I don't know where she's taking us on this particular journey. So that was basically what I felt throughout most of the short stories that I was reading. But then when you get to the end, every single ending is just so succinct and it's just so perfect. Like, it's very rare that you come across indie books where the ending is actually a really good wrap up in the last 100 pages or so, or the last 50 or the last 30 pages or so, and such and so forth. But because these are short stories, you have to obviously get to the point a lot quicker and a lot sooner. And I feel like with every single story, she hasn't failed at all. Like, every single story starts brilliantly, it ends brilliantly, and the middle build, oh my God, talk about a middle build. Now listen, super quick rant here as well. I love middle builds. I'm struggling with my own middle build. But again, these stories have really kind of helped show me on a much shorter scale how important the middle build actually is for each of your stories and what you need to try and do to bring that arc from beginning to end in order to tie up those loose ends and end it in a way that just kind of leaves you feeling like, yeah, that was a really good ending. Now, as much as I loved each story individually, I did give them all like little kind of individual ratings. I won't share those, but there were a bunch of stories that I did read that I thoroughly enjoyed, that in a way, I guess I'm trying to say, it would be great if those stories were standalone novels, like if you could expand them, because I know you're going to be watching this video. Guys, get a copy, read them, and if you're up for it, I will share some of the titles for those particular stories. And I want to just see if that is something that potentially that Ro could end up doing. Those stories are absolutely fantastic. That's also another aspect of short stories, novelettes and novellas that I really like. If you really like a story And so long as the author is obviously alive and able to communicate and is actually up for expanding various stories, depending on the reader feedback, they will sometimes, very rarely, but very sometimes, will actually go off and develop an entire novel or an entire series from those particular short stories. But there are a number of stories in this collection that I thoroughly enjoyed that I would love to see as like much bigger, with much longer like word lengths and stuff. I would love to see a novel. It would be absolutely fantastic. There's one that keeps popping in my head right now, but I'm not going to mention it. I'm going to keep it to myself. But I would just sort of, yeah, just say that I really liked this particular collection of short stories. Now, like I said, it's a psychological thing for me. I don't really read a lot of short stories, and it's definitely a promise that I've made to myself to try and read more short stories. But I thoroughly enjoyed this collection, and it's definitely up there with my collection of like Tom Hanks uncommon type short story collection that he came out with quite recently. And I love Tom Hanks, like I'm obsessed with Tom Hanks. It's kind of sick. But his short story collection is something that I know I'm definitely going to enjoy because I love Tom Hanks. I've already said that twice now, so I think it's probably toward the time to sort of like end this video. There are definitely lots of things to love. There wasn't really a lot to dislike about the stories, which kind of makes it seem like I'm being biased, but I genuinely just didn't find anything that I didn't like about these stories. No, I liked all of them. I liked the structure, I liked the ideas that came around with them. I also love the author, I think she's great. But I would probably highly recommend this particular collection to people who want to check her out as an author. She does have more stories up on a website which I've forgotten the name of, but I have shared it over on my Facebook, and I will put all her details down below so you can check out more of her stuff and also purchase a copy of her story. I've put her details down below, let her know that I sent you. I would definitely highly recommend this book, and on Goodreads, I've given it a 5-star rating. Normally, with my Goodreads ratings, 5-star usually goes for things that are absolutely mind-blowing. They're so orgasmic, they're so electric. Oh my God, have my babies type of rating. Like for a book, like it has to be absolutely out of this world. But I would definitely put this one up there in my 5-star rating because, you know, I love short story collections, I love indie books, and I love my books that are written by my friends, so enjoy! I'm so weird. Yeah, you'll get more of that as time goes on. You'll get used to it, it's fine. You'll get used to it. Like, I'm crazy. Anybody who knows me from my old channel can probably vouch for that and be like, oh yeah, no, Sai's weird. She's really weird.